Before we start this podcast, I want to definitely remind you of a sponsor for Fresh of the Word, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest. In the world of wrestling where there's hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads, don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. So if you'd like to discuss a possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or even Zubaz, then drop them a line at 20by20apparel.com. That's the number 20x, the number 20apparel.com. And also check out their enamel pin line. It's super cool.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what it goes. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. I tell I'm running out of breath, I tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, 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 goddammit, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddammit, we so damn fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier, and this is episode 179. And the guest for this episode is a return guest, Josh Smith, guitarist of the Australian metalcore band Northlane, who recently released their new album Alien via UNFD Central. The interview was recorded recently at St. Andrews Hall in Detroit during the North American leg of their Alien World Tour with Era, Currents, and Crystal Lake. It was an awesome show, one of the best shows that I've seen all year. Crystal Lake was amazing. Northlane, oh my God, wow. I still, when I think about it, still am at a high from that show. And that was like maybe a month or so ago. But anyways, during our interview, we get a glimpse into the process and inspirations behind the writing and recording of Alien, along with how Northlane continues to evolve as a band. We also get into the possible reasons why there's so many awesome metal bands coming from Australia these days. And that really stems with them having to make the most out of the little opportunities that they have in Australia. So they basically have to just kill it to, make sure they get noticed, because there's just, there's so many bands, but little opportunities for them. So we talk about all that. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview with Josh Smith, guitarist of the Australian metalcore band Northlane. Here with Josh from Northlane. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. I'm excited to finally see you guys live.
Yeah.
I became a fan of yours with the Mesmer album, which was one of my favorite albums of that year.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been wanting to see you guys live, and you're finally here. And it looks like you've already had a really fun, tour thus far. How's it been?
The tour has totally blown my mind and expectations. I had no idea that we would come back and be able to do what we've done so far. Most of the shows are selling out. This has never happened for us before in America. We've done a lot of stuff in Canada before that's been pretty successful, but we've never had a tour sell like this before in the US. So it's it's really reassuring, and you know, I think we picked the right moment to come back, and
It's an awesome lineup too.
yeah, that as well.
Right. I feel like everybody who tours with Crystal Lake just falls in love with that band. They're like, dude, these guys are fucking awesome.
Yeah, they're great. We did Japan with them just before we came here.
How was that?
It was wild.
Wild. Oh,
Very
shoot.
sick. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, this new album, like, I feel like what's great with Northlane is like every album does have its own uniqueness to it. You know, what were you guys sort of going into? You know, your mind state going into the new album, because like Mesmer, you know, they had a certain sound, but I feel like this one goes a little bit more heavier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's like two kind of key factors there. The first one is that we self-produced the record. So we had two guys in Australia that we really trusted. One of them for all the instrumentals and one of them for the vocals to kind of realize what we wanted everything to sound like. But we made the creative decisions, which was really important to us. And that meant that the sound that we came to the table with was translated just how we wanted it to be on the record. Because what usually happens is you go to a producer and then they kind of like put their stamp on your release a bit. And sometimes that's really helpful, but for us, especially because of how like strange this record is, we kind of felt that if we were to bring someone else in, it was unlikely that they would fully understand what the vision we had was.
They would probably kind of like strip all those little like nuances of the record that maybe sound different than other, you know, bands of your genre that I noticed that were like very unique.
Yeah, that could have been one thing. I mean, it's hard to know without it happening, you know. But the other thing was we were just not like really in the best place when we started writing it, so the music came out really dark, and the only kind of lyrics we could pair that with were the darkest shit that we had to dig up, and you know, that was Marcus's story. So I think it's like a perfect storm of those two factors that made it sound the way it sounds.
Did kind of like getting all that, you know, darkness out, was it, you know, therapeutic for the band or for Marcus?
He definitely found it therapeutic for him to talk about those stories. For the rest of us, like, I'm not entirely sure, but like the real payoff happens when we're on tour and we see like these songs connecting with a live audience. That's something that, like, you know, you go through all this turmoil and like all the difficulty in putting the release together, and even thinking about, you know, where we were at as a band. Like, I think like a few changes happened. We had Brendan come in during the recording cycle, and that really saved us. I don't even know if we would have made it to here if he hadn't have joined and kind of like breathed a new life into the band.
Talk more about that, like, because this is the second album that Marcus is the lead on, and
third.
Oh, okay, third. Yeah, this is the third that Marcus is the lead on, and then you have another new member. Like, those sort of changes, how do they feel now? You know.
Well, Brendan, like, he was a very old friend of ours.
Yeah.
So for him, all it really felt like was just a huge boost, and you know, he's a phenomenal player, but also vocalist as well. So, and producer and songwriter. So, all of a sudden, we had this other tool to use, and you know, this person backing up Marcus on the vocals live is an absolute monster of a player and just a great person to be around. So, really, it was just like, I don't know, the little push forward that we needed, I think.
Yeah, it was a little element to the band that maybe you didn't know you needed it before, but it kind of like when it came, you're like, oh, this is maybe what we needed.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it for sure.
What how are these new songs going over with the crowd on this tour? The tours that you've done. What's your reaction to seeing people react to the new songs?
Really, really well. So I think like there's a few deeper cuts on the record that people aren't super familiar with yet.
Yeah.
But the lead singles have been huge, and that was really surprising for me. It's always a bit nerve-wracking, like when you put a new record out and you go play that material for people, you never really know how they're going to take it. But from the first show that we did on this new record, which was a little secret one in Australia, we could tell straight away that people understood what this record was about, and it meant something to them.
What's the majority of the material that you're playing on these tours? Is it newer stuff, or is there any older stuff?
Yeah, about half of it's the new record, and then the rest of it is just a mix of our catalog. Like, especially for this tour, we understood that we had to service our fans that haven't been able to see us for so long, because we haven't been here in like 4 years or something.
Right.
So we picked like a bunch of songs from our catalog that they would know, and then the rest is just all new album.
What was sort of like the recording process like for you guys this time around? Was because there was a lot of darker material. Was it an easy thing? Was it a hard thing? Did this how was it like going through making this record?
The writing was very difficult, but at the same time, it also felt like everything was falling into place in the right way.
Yeah.
We decided when we started writing this record that we were going to take a bold risk with it, and we weren't really going to worry about what people were expecting to hear.
Yeah.
So by going into it with that approach, there weren't any real barriers to what we could do. Right. That we had in our minds. It's something that's kind of difficult to explain, but essentially we didn't really give a shit.
You had that attitude last time I talked to you. You're like, if people don't like this record, they can go back and listen to the old stuff.
Yeah. Well, this time it was my, they don't like this record, and we don't really care, like, because the topics are really important, but the writing process was a lot longer than any of our other records. We spent a very long time writing it, and we actually recorded the album in 2 halves. So we did half of it sort of halfway through last year in May.
Right.
And we sat on those songs for about 6 months and then did the other half. Made a few changes to them, of course. And yeah, that's how it happened.
When you're dealing with like songwriting about things that are kind of heavy, how do you sort of like include some self-care in that, so you're not like going down a downward spiral even with a lot of this heavy topics?
I think the point of it isn't really that this time around. It's not like we had to be very careful about the way we wrote these songs, because the topic of it's Marcus's story, right? All we did was tell that story, and there was in some songs we were able to add some sort of a silver lining to whatever that particular story was about, but in other songs there wasn't one. Maybe the silver lining is that he's still here. Yeah. Despite everything that he's had to go through. So like I don't know, like that wasn't really a focal point for us. In the past maybe, yeah, but on Alien it just wasn't even a thought that we had. Because sometimes there isn't good in the bad,
Was there like a conversation made before the writing of this album that you guys were gonna, tackle these stories for Marcus? Did he just kind of to be like, this is the stuff that I want to talk about? Was there any sort of conversation like that?
The way it went down was we had been sent. The way Northlane writes is John will write a piece of music, and usually what happens is Marcus and I sit down and we write a vocal for it, and then we send it back to John. Likely we change things on both ends there to make it all fit nicely together, and then we refine it a million times before it ends up as the song. And what pushed us in this direction was that we been sent the first pieces of music, and they were incredibly dark and heavy. And I sat down with Marcus at his house, and we started writing about the kind of shit that we'd written about before and laid it down on the track. And we didn't even make it to the point of sending it to John. We just went, this isn't right. Like,
just wasn't clicking,
Well, yeah, it was like, these lyrics don't do this music justice,
right.
And the way that you're singing this doesn't do the music justice because it's so darker and heavier, and we need to match that.
Yeah.
And there's only one thing that we can really talk about. Do you want to go there? And he was like, yeah, let's try it. So what we would do is, this is kind of generalizing. Not every song went down this way, but quite often we'd sit down and listen to a song, and I'd be like, how does this make you feel? What emotions does this evoke in you? And we'd relate that to a past experience. He would tell me about that experience. I would write down pages and pages and pages of notes. And then usually at that point I would go home, and I'd come back the next day, and we would look at what he'd written down and then kind of pull ideas from that. Sometimes I would do that at home and bring him something.
Yeah.
And we would start off with like what the crux of the song was, and that would be the chorus.
Yeah.
And then we would write outside from there. So all of the songs, like in the chorus, you really understand what the point of the song is.
Yeah.
And then all of the other verses and whatnot are there to kind of bolster and back up and tell the story. So that's kind of how we went about doing it.
During this sort of collaborative effort within the band to make these songs, how important is sort of honesty and communication between the members?
Well, it's extremely important. It's like
the Detroit Rolling Pub is coming by. They partying.
I wish I was on that. We should have done the podcast on one of them. Oh man, what was the question? I just got so distracted. How important is communication? Well,
yeah,
it's
honesty
everything.
and communication,
Yeah.
like within the band, to make sure that the right music is going with the right lyrics and stuff like that.
Well, we're incredibly brutal to each other about that sort of stuff, and like John, straight away, if I send him something that he doesn't feel right about, he will tell me straight away. So there's no love lost there.
How do you like just not piss each other off though, to a point where it would break the band?
Well, you kind of have a thick skin, and you kind of understand that the reason you're giving this feedback is to better the song, and it's not really about someone's ego or what they think or what they prefer. It's like, well, if they don't like this idea, there's nothing wrong with trying something else.
Right.
And even if you try something else and it doesn't turn out as good, or you don't like it, that's completely fine. You might come up with a third idea that'll be even better. So, or
something that's good for the future. Or something.
Yeah, the idea is to just not take shit personally, and just understand that you're trying to create the best piece of art possible.
Is there anything that is there any ideas that you just kind of keep around for maybe the future, or go back to some ideas that you've had in the past?
I know John does. If something doesn't quite fit right on the release, he usually stashes it, and maybe it'll be relevant later. We don't know, but Not so much with vocals. I mean, maybe with Marcus about things that he wants to talk about, but not so much. Yeah.
How's the reception these days for Northlane back in your home in Australia?
Really good. So we this US tour that we're doing is part of like a bigger world tour that goes until the end of the year.
Yeah.
And the next territory after North America is Australia. And like this tour, that one's almost sold out as well. So we've only got 2 shows left that haven't sold out on that tour. So I'm gonna say pretty good. The record went number 3. So yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll win our 3rd aria. I don't know.
Hey, maybe.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any sort of like influence out in Australia to in regards to what kind of band you wanted to be? Because there's a few bands, there's a lot of bands from Australia that I really love that are kind of on the whole metalcore, deathcore sort of sound. What is it about things in Australia that I feel like recently in recent memory, like there's been some really cool bands.
I think that's been the case for a long time, and the reason for it is we don't really get afforded the same opportunities that a band from maybe the UK or America would get.
Yeah.
So you have to work really hard to get somewhere, and there's not that many people in Australia compared to here. So to grab the attention of who's there, you really have to try and be bold and do something exceptional and work really hard at it to get a foothold. And the other thing you'll find is that because the chips are really stacked against you if you're an Australian band, you don't really expect to have any success from it. So all of the people that are making music from Australian bands are doing it for the right reasons, not because they want to be famous.
Yeah, we're just like, screw it. We're going to do what we want. We're going to be bold about it.
Yeah.
And, if it works, cool. Yeah.
I don't think anyone ever has any expectations of it working, though. And that's probably the beauty in why they take risks the way that we do.
Yeah, there's some phenomenal bands coming from Australia. Love it. And what's sort of like the culture there from where you're from, just society and whatnot from your perspective?
That's a pretty broad question.
I mean, just, just from from an artistic standpoint, I guess entertainment, arts and whatever, you already talked about how it's just kind of, you don't get afforded the same opportunities that maybe from people from here or the UK get. So what's the general like sort of, I guess, culture, when it comes to the arts? I mean, domestically and in the city that I live in, Melbourne is very supportive of the arts. It's actually the live music capital of the world. It has more concerts in a year than New York City or London. Oh, damn.
Yeah.
I guess there's something going on there all the time.
Live music venues, like
just all the time.
The street I live in, there's like 5 or 6 different venues, and there's always something going on. So Melburnians are like really passionate about it. It doesn't extend everywhere around the country, but people really care about music in Australia. Like even just the attendance numbers that artists get are pretty exceptional, especially when you think about how many people live there.
Yeah.
So I think we really love our art and our music. When I talk about the opportunities being afforded, it's just more in a global sense. Like if they want to be a career musician, that's when it becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Whether it's like, recent bands or just bands from the past, are there any bands from Melbourne that you're like, people should know about that maybe they don't know about globally?
From Melbourne? Wow. There's actually a band that I manage called Wind Waker that are from Melbourne that are
Yes,
doing
I've
really
heard them.
well.
Yeah, they're dope. Yeah.
Other ones, maybe not necessarily from Melbourne. I think the next Australian band that's going to get a lot of global attention will probably be Justice for the Damned.
Okay.
They're really starting to gain a lot of traction in Australia, and people seem very excited about them.
Word. I'll check them out. I haven't heard them yet.
There's another Melbourne band that's quite popular called Alpha Wolf that you may have heard of.
Okay.
I reckon they'll be, in a similar position too. Outside of those two, I'm not entirely sure. I can't think of the top of my head.
That's a few cool ones. What do you hope your fans get out of this album, Aliens? Like, with all these stories from Marcus's life, what do you hope your listeners get out of this album?
I just hope they get like a fulfilling experience from listening to it and they understand, because everyone interprets it differently. Some people don't pay attention to lyrics at all. Some people care about how heavy the song is and how it sounds. So I don't know if they.
It's not heavy enough, man.
Yeah.
Whatever, man. They used to be heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all the slow shit.
So, if they can listen to it and enjoy it for their own reasons, then I think that's cool.
I always like to ask this question during interviews. Is like, what's sort of like a nugget of knowledge from your life and career that anybody listening to this, it doesn't matter what sort of avenue of artistry that they're in, like they could project into their own life?
Well, I think if you want to be successful at something, doesn't matter what it is, there's always going to be somebody else like willing to take your place. So you need to work harder than everyone else. Otherwise, you're never going to win.
Nice. What's what do you feel like the future is for your band? Is that something you even think about? What do you hope like this band goes to?
Well, I mean, I have a plan for the next 2 years and then a plan for the next 5 years. I could tell you that we'll definitely be back here sooner rather than later.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to talk about my vision until it's been realized.
Yeah.
Because if I told you 2 years ago that we were going to do a world tour and we'd be selling shows out, like I'm not going to make that statement until it happens.
Right.
But I have an idea of where we want to take things, and I think we're definitely on our way to achieving those goals.
Yeah, you mentioned about doing management too. What do you do outside of the band? When you're not doing band stuff. What's some other things that you do?
Well, I manage Northlane and co-manage 2 other artists.
Okay.
I have a retail business as well. I love to cook. That's about it, really. I don't have time for much else.
Right. What's the business you?
Oh, we sell like guitar pedals and shit like that.
Okay. All right. Is it doing well?
Yeah, it's doing all right.
All right. So you got your hands in a few fires.
I do.
What's the 2 bands that you manage? Like 2 other bands?
One of them's called Make Them Suffer, and the other one's called Wind Waker.
Oh, I love Make Them Suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw them here actually in Pontiac a couple years ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, they were dope live.
Yeah, they're really good. The guitar player's my old housemate, actually.
Oh, nice,
Yep.
nice. Yeah, I interviewed what's the lead singer's name? I'm forgetting his name. Sean, yeah. I interviewed Sean a while back. Probably not too long around the time I interviewed you last.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I love Make 'Em Suffer. Yeah, that was one of the bands I was like kind of talking about that like are just amazing from Australia.
They just did a new record too.
Yes. I heard like the first single and stuff, whatever they dropped somewhat recently.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. When's their next album coming out?
I can't say.
Okay.
sometime
Next year.
Okay, next year. Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. All right. I was just wondering if it was coming out anytime soon.
No, not yet.
Not yet. That's good. All right. It's been great talking with you, man. Catching up with you this time around. The new album, Aliens, is so good, and you're on this U.S. tour. Where can people go online to get more information about, Northlane, anything else that you want to plug?
Well, they could just head to our website. It's got everything that we have going on there. It's northlaneband.com.
Cool. All right, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
So that was my interview with Josh Smith, the guitarist from the metalcore band Northlane. All the links about a bunch of the things that we talked about during the episode and to where you can follow both Josh and Northlane online will be in the show notes for this episode at freshasthepodcast.com. And before we get out of here, I definitely want to remind you how you can support the podcast. I am on Patreon now at patreon.com/freshastheword. For as little as $1 per month, you can help out Fresh as the Word with, everything that I'm doing. Every dollar counts. And for the $3 a month tier, you'll have access to the Patreon-only podcast episodes where I dig deep into my audio archives for interviews that I've done over the past decade or so for publications outside of Fresh as the Word, mostly print stuff, some web stuff. Some of the interviews I never use, so these are super exclusive. And then some I only used a little bit of for the articles that I was writing. There's a lot of good stuff that I have in my archives. So go to patreon.com/freshastheword and sign up for the $3 a month tier to have access for those. I have a lot of great episodes already up, so you'll have access to those also. Once again, that's patreon.com/freshastheword. And if you would like to follow me online, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at kfreshastheword. And you can follow Fresh as the Word on Twitter at freshastheword. And that's IZ in the is. And on Instagram at Fresh as the Word Podcast. Also, come join the Facebook group for Fresh as the Word at facebook.com/groups/Fresh as the Word. And there'll be a lot of great content in there also outside of the Fresh as the Podcast website. And if you have any questions for me, you want to send me anything, want to pitch me anything, you can email me at djkfresh@gmail.com. All right, that's another show in the books. And like always, live life with intensity with a capital 10. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.